I always liked that cafe on the corner of 7th and Pine. It had this warm, lived-in feel with the smell of fresh bread and espresso clinging to the walls. We'd been coming there for years, me and Molly, especially on lazy Sundays or when we wanted to pretend life wasn't tugging us in 10 different directions. That day, it was my idea. I'd wrapped up a client meeting early and texted her, "Lunch? Your favorite spot?" "My treat." She texted back almost immediately. "Yes. Been craving their soup all week." When I walked in, she was already at our usual table by the window, the one with the warped glass that made pedestrians look like walking puddles. She waved, smiling that familiar smile of hers, all dimples and squinting eyes, and I remember thinking how grateful I was for her. Even after everything's stress, late hours, drifting routines, I still thought we were okay. Maybe not perfect, but solid. We ordered the usual. She got the roasted tomato bisque with a side of sourdough. I ordered the turkey pesto panini. It felt comfortable. Safe. We talked about small things, her coworkers, my boss's tendency to chew ice during Zoom calls, a neighbor's weird new garden sculpture. I laughed. She laughed. It felt like something normal. Real. And then the waiter came back. He looked confused, maybe even a little embarrassed, holding a second receipt in his hand. He handed it to me and cleared his throat. "Apologies, sir, this must have printed by accident. It's from yesterday, same table, same meal, almost the same time. Just wanted to double-check." I took the slip without thinking. My eyes scanned the paper idly until I saw it. "Window seat, just like last time. Don't forget the chocolate mousse for Molly." At first, my brain didn't quite catch up. I stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. But there it was, plain as day. Her name. Her favorite dessert. The kind she'd always claim was too sweet before finishing it in 4 bites. "Molly," I said, my voice quieter than I intended, "did you come here yesterday?" She blinked. "Too fast." "What?" I held up the receipt. "It's from yesterday. Same table. Same order. Says something about the mousse for Molly." And there it was, barely a flash, but I saw it. Her face changed. The tiniest twitch in her cheek, the stiffness around her eyes. She wasn't confused. She was calculating. "Oh," she said quickly, "that's not me. I think Kate mentioned bringing a friend here. Maybe it's a coincidence. I mean, Molly's not exactly an uncommon name, right?" She was talking too fast. I knew that tone. I'd heard it when she tried to explain why she'd forgotten our anniversary 2 years ago or why she'd stayed out late without answering her phone. It was her defense mode, layered in casual denial, hoping I'd just move on. She reached for her phone then, didn't even wait for a response. "Sorry," she mumbled, "work text." "Just a sec." She stood up, turned her back, and pressed the phone to her ear like she was answering a call. But I noticed her screen. It was still on the home screen. No call was coming in. I watched her walk toward the door and step outside. The phone stayed at her ear, but I could see the tension in her shoulders from the window. Her fingers trembled just slightly as she tapped the screen again and again, probably trying to make it look convincing. She didn't come back for 10 minutes. When she did, she was all smiles again, the same bright energy she had walked in with, like nothing had happened. "Sorry about that," she said as she sat back down. "Total chaos at the office. Anyway, where were we?" I nodded slowly, folded the receipt, and slid it into my pocket. "We were talking about the neighbor's sculpture," I said, voice steady. "Oh, right," she laughed, taking a sip of her drink. "The gnome thing. You still think it looks like your uncle, don't you?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I couldn't unsee the moment she cracked. The rest of lunch went by in a blur. I couldn't taste the sandwich. I couldn't keep my thoughts straight. I kept looking at her, really looking, and wondering how much of the past few months I'd just blindly accepted. We finished eating. She declined dessert, which was unusual. Chocolate mousse had always been her go-to indulgence. "You sure you don't want to get something sweet?" I asked casually. She shook her head. "Nah, I'm full. Maybe next time." I nodded again. Next time. I paid the bill. The real one. She stood, slid her coat on, and we walked out into the pale afternoon light. She linked her arm through mine, humming a song under her breath. Something she always did when she wanted to fill silence without saying anything meaningful. We didn't talk about the receipt again. But later that night, I took it out of my pocket, smoothed it on the kitchen counter, and stared at the handwriting. "Don't forget the chocolate mousse for Molly." I ran my fingers over the paper, over the printed timestamp, 1:17 p.m. Exactly when we'd sat down today. I closed my eyes and pictured it. Same table. Same meal. A day earlier. And her. With someone else. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid there in the dark beside Molly. The soft whir of the ceiling fan brushing over our bed. her breathing slow and even like none of it had happened. Like we'd had just another ordinary lunch in just another ordinary week. But I couldn't stop replaying that moment. The shift in her expression when she saw the receipt. That subtle flash of panic, buried under a quick excuse and a too smooth recovery. It gnawed at me, a slow burn suspicion tightening in my chest. She had always been good at brushing things off. Good at distracting me. If I brought up something strange, a missed call, a late night, an odd interaction, she'd smile and tilt her head and say something that made me feel silly for even asking. And I used to believe her. I wanted to believe her. Because believing the alternative meant stepping into a world where the person you trusted most might not be who they claimed to be. But now the cracks were showing. I started seeing them everywhere. Little things mostly, details I hadn't paid attention to at the time. Like how, 3 months ago, she started putting her phone face down on the kitchen counter. At first, I thought it was just a habit. But then I noticed she never left it unattended anymore. If she went to the bathroom, the phone went with her. If she showered, she tucked it under her towel. And the late-night calls. They were new too. Once or twice a week, she'd step out onto the porch just after dinner. Phone pressed to her ear, voice hushed. When I asked who it was, she always said it was her sister. But her sister lived 2 time zones away and had 2 toddlers under 5. No chance she was calling at 10:30 p.m. to chat about nothing. Then there was the gift. My birthday last month. Molly always made a big deal about birthdays. She used to bake cakes from scratch, hide little presents around the house, plan surprise dinners with friends. But this year, she handed me a $50 Amazon gift card, said, "Get yourself something fun," and left 20 minutes later for a work thing. No dinner, no card, no kiss on the cheek. Just a glance at the clock and a distracted goodbye. I told myself she was just stressed. Overworked, burnt out. But deep down, something had already shifted. She used to post pictures of us. Anniversaries, date nights, random mornings when I'd made her coffee in bed. But then, 2 months ago, she started wiping them. Slowly, subtly. First it was just a few. Then whole albums disappeared. When I asked about it, she said she was rebranding her profile. That she wanted it to be more professional for networking. I wanted to believe that. I tried. But one night, I clicked through her tagged photos, only to find she'd untagged herself in everything we'd ever been in together. All of it gone. Like I'd been photoshopped out of her life. I remember sitting at my desk that night, staring at the blankness of her feed, and feeling hollow. Like I was watching myself disappear in real time, and she didn't even notice. Or worse, she did and it didn't bother her. I tried to talk to her about it. It was a Sunday morning. I'd made pancakes. She came downstairs in that oversized t-shirt I used to love, hair messy, face bare, and I thought, maybe now's a good time. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice light. "You've been pulling back on social media lately." She didn't look up, just poured syrup over her plate. "Yeah, just trying to be more private." I nodded. "But you took down all the photos of us." She shrugged. "People don't need to see everything." "That's fair," I said. "But, are we okay?" That's when she looked at me, just for a second. And the smile she gave was thin, polite, almost like a stranger trying to reassure a coworker. "Of course," she said. "Why wouldn't we be?" That's all. No follow-up. No reaching across the table. Just a quick change of subject to a show she wanted to binge. And I let it slide. I forced myself to believe her because the alternative meant unraveling every thread of the life we'd built. But now, lying next to her with the soft blue of the alarm clock blinking 3:42 a.m., I couldn't unsee the truth anymore. I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. Something was wrong. And whatever it was, it had been wrong for a while. I turned to look at her. She was curled away from me as usual. One arm under her pillow, the other wrapped around herself. She used to sleep pressed against me, our legs tangled, her hand tucked under my ribs. That stopped somewhere around spring. I didn't even notice it at the time, just figured she needed space. But now it felt deliberate, like she had been quietly peeling herself away for months, 1 inch at a time. And I let her. I let her because I was too tired to question it, too distracted to see the bigger picture. But now the puzzle was sitting in front of me, disjointed, missing edges, but starting to take shape. There was a pattern. There was a reason. And whether I liked it or not, I had to know. I've always believed that the truth has a weight. Not just metaphorically, but physically. You feel it. In your chest. In your stomach. Behind your eyes when you're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. Too tired to be awake but too anxious to sleep. That weight had been building for weeks. Every late meeting. Every turned phone. Every flicker of guilt she tried to mask with laughter or distraction. It stacked on top of me like bricks. And eventually, I realized I couldn't carry it anymore without knowing. Really knowing. So I made a choice. It wasn't something I'm proud of. But then again, betrayal doesn't come with rules. There are no manuals for what to do when the person you love starts living a double life right in front of you. Molly had a tablet, an older one she barely used anymore. Or so I thought. She mostly kept it plugged in beside the bed, buried under a mess of books and unread magazines. She hadn't touched it in weeks, as far as I could tell. But one night, after she left claiming she was staying at her sister's place because they needed to talk, I noticed the screen lit up for a second when I passed it. Notifications, messenger alerts, cloud sync, the works. I hesitated. There's a line you cross when you look through someone's messages. You can't unsee what you find. But I'd already been living in the dark for too long. I needed light, even if it burned. I slid the tablet out from under the books, wiped the dust from the screen, and opened it. She hadn't logged out of anything. Everything was there. All synced, her email, messages, photos, calendar. First, I just stared. I think part of me hoped I'd find nothing. That I'd open it, scroll through, and feel ridiculous. That I could apologize to her later for doubting her, and we'd laugh about it over wine. But that's not what happened. The first message I read ended that fantasy. Thank you for last night, Calvin. I haven't laughed like that in years. Calvin. That was a name I'd heard exactly once, maybe twice. She'd mentioned him in passing, said he was a new hire at her firm. Smart guy. Bit intense, kind of a quiet type. That's all I knew. But there he was, on my screen. In my house, taking up space in my life where I used to be. The messages didn't stop there. They weren't **Zool, not exactly. No explicit pictures or crude language. But in some ways that made it worse. They were emotional, thoughtful. **** mate in a way that cut deeper than anything physical ever could. She wrote to him the way she used to write to me, when we were first falling in love. She told him about her childhood, her fears, the things she never let anyone else see. She sent him ***ts of her day, a latte with her name misspelled, the skyline outside her office, her legs stretched across a hotel bed with a wine glass balanced on her thigh. There was a rhythm to their conversation, a familiarity that spoke of weeks, maybe months of daily contact. She called him her escape, said things like, I wish we could press pause on everything else, and you make me feel like myself again. One photo showed her in a hotel robe, standing on a balcony with the city lights behind her. Another showed their 2 wine glasses, side by side, beside a crumpled room service receipt. She'd been in Chicago last month, for a conference. I stayed home, fed the neighbor's cat, fixed the garbage disposal, and texted her goodnight every evening. She never replied after 10 p.m. Now I knew why. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't throw the tablet against the wall like some dramatic movie scene. I just sat there, perfectly still, and let it break me. I went to the printer, felt mechanical. I copied everything, ***ts, emails, time-stamped photos. I printed them in batches, slipping each into a manila folder, labeling them by date. I don't know why I did it like that. Maybe because part of me needed to take control, to make sense of the chaos, to turn heartbreak into something I could hold, organize, file away. When I was done, I stacked the folders in a box and hid it in the garage behind a shelf of old paint cans. It was 2 a.m. by then. She texted me around 2:17 a.m. Heading to bed. Long day. Hope you got some rest tonight. Red heart. I stared at the screen. I almost replied. I almost said, "Me too." Instead, I turned off the tablet, placed it exactly where I found it, and went back to bed. She came home the next morning with a grocery bag in hand and a smile on her face. "Hey babe," she said. "I grabbed those oat milk things you like. They were on sale." She kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed, and I kissed her back like everything had. The next morning, I didn't go home. Instead, I parked at the public library and sat in the lot for nearly an hour, staring at the wheel, wondering what kind of man I was becoming. I wasn't used to this version of myself, the one who printed proof of betrayal, who hid it like contraband in the garage, who kissed his wife with teeth clenched behind a smile. I had always considered myself the forgiving type. Patient maybe to a fault. But some truths take up permanent space. And once I knew what I knew, the idea of working through it felt like a slap to my own reflection. But then I had a thought I hadn't had before, not about revenge, exactly. It was colder than that. More deliberate. What if I wasn't the only one being betrayed? I pulled out my phone and opened one of the screenshots. Molly had sent Calvin a photo of his dog, some spotted, shaggy mutt with its head tilted just so. The caption read, "I think he misses me more than you do. Dogface red heart." The dog had a collar. A name tag. Scout. It was a weird thing to remember, but useful. I typed Calvin plus Scout plus Olympia into social media. A few clicks later, I had a hit. Lena Caldwell. She had posted a photo of herself with the dog Scout last winter. A snow-covered hiking trail, the same collar, same dog. The caption said, "Family hike. Cold noses, warm hearts." I clicked her profile. It was mostly private, but the bio said enough. Therapist. Mother. Chaos manager. Married to a man who loves spreadsheets and single malt. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. I sat there for another 10 minutes, considering the ethics of what I was about to do. This woman didn't ask to be dragged into my disaster. But neither did I. I opened a blank email and attached a PDF of the screenshots. Not all of them, just the essentials. The messages, a photo of Molly's hand in Calvin's on that hotel bed, and the wine glasses. I created a new burner email account and typed, "I believe you deserve to know what your husband's been doing. My wife is involved. This isn't easy for me either." Then I hit send. It felt like dropping a match in a forest. I didn't know what would burn first, me or the truth. She replied 5 hours later. "Call me." No greeting. No signature. Just 2 words and a phone number. I sat on my back porch and dialed, heart in my throat. She answered on the first ring. "Is this Steve?" she asked, her voice low but steady. "Yes," I said. I'm really sorry." She was silent for a long moment, then said, "Don't be. You didn't cheat on me." We talked for nearly an hour. Turns out she'd had her suspicions too. Calvin had been coming home late, hiding his phone, suddenly interested in new music and cologne. She hadn't pieced it all together, but something had felt off. "It's like he became someone else," she said. "Like a stranger moved in and started pretending to be my husband." By the end of the call, we were no longer just victims. We were allies. "Do you have a plan?" she asked me. "Not really," I admitted. "I mean, I have proof. But I'm not sure what to do with it yet." "I do," she said quietly. And then she told me about the charity dinner. It was an annual event hosted by a local nonprofit Calvin volunteered with, ironically enough, an organization focused on family wellness and integrity. This year's theme? Celebrating family values. Both couples, me and Molly, Calvin and Lena, had been invited. It was a public affair with speeches, media coverage, even a slideshow that would display photos of the board members and their families. Calvin was one of the keynote speakers. She paused after telling me this. "Do you think you could stomach being in the same room as them?" I thought about it. The image of Molly in that hotel robe came to mind. Her text about how "you make me feel safe with you" to a man who wasn't me. "Yes," I said. "I can stomach it." We met twice in person over the next week. Neutral locations, coffee shops, empty parks, always away from prying eyes. Lena brought a laptop. She had access to the photo queue for the slideshow. "All I need," she said, "is one image. One real image." I slid the flash drive across the table. "It's all in there." We picked the photo together. Not the most graphic one. Not the most obvious. Just subtle enough to raise eyebrows, but undeniable. It showed Molly in a hotel bathrobe, laughing, her bare shoulder leaning into Calvin's chest. His arm wrapped casually around her waist, the blurred backdrop of a hotel skyline behind them. It looked like an in**mate vacation *T, something you'd expect to see in a honeymoon album. Except neither of them was supposed to be there together. This one, Lena said. It'll say everything without saying anything. The night before the event, I couldn't sleep. Molly had been distant all week, claiming work stress. I watched her scroll through Calvin's social media, liking a photo of him on a panel discussion. She didn't even flinch when I walked into the room. "You're quiet lately," she said. "So are you." She smiled. "Guess we're both overdue for a break." I nodded. "Maybe we'll get one tomorrow night." She laughed. "What, at that corny charity thing? Could be a night to remember." There's a particular silence that comes just before impact. A stillness in the air, like the world is holding its breath. That's what it felt like as I stood beside Molly in the banquet hall, waiting for the walls of our life to fall in. She looked beautiful as always, effortlessly composed in a navy dress, her hair swept into a soft knot, that tiny silver bracelet I gave her on our 3rd anniversary glinting in the low light. She leaned in and whispered something about the wine being too sweet. I nodded, even smiled. Lena and Calvin sat across the room, perfectly visible from our table. He looked relaxed, confident. He wore arrogance like a tailored suit, smiling wide, greeting old donors with a polished handshake. Lena didn't smile. She barely blinked. She wore her silence like armor, her fingers pressed around her wine glass like it was the only thing anchoring her to the floor. We hadn't spoken much since finalizing the plan. There wasn't anything left to say. The photo was cued. The tech coordinator, someone Lena knew from grad school, had loaded it into the community memories slideshow that would roll after dinner. No one had double-checked the file list. No one ever does. I pushed the roasted chicken around my plate, nodding politely at Molly's small talk with the woman seated next to her. She played her part well, complimented the decor, told a story about a child from her nonprofit who had overcome tremendous odds, laughed on cue, all while the evidence sat in the slideshow queue, waiting for its 5 seconds of daylight. As the last course was cleared, the MC took the stage. "Tonight, we celebrate the heart of our work: family, connection, and integrity. Let's look back on the moments that made this year so powerful." Lights dimmed. The screen flickered on. The first few slides were exactly what you'd expect. Smiling couples at fundraisers, kids with painted faces holding craft projects, volunteers in matching t-shirts. Applause bubbled through the room, warm and automatic. And then our moment. It appeared around the 23rd slide. No transition, no announcement, just the image. Molly and Calvin, hotel background, wrapped in quiet in * Macy. Her hand on his chest, his lips inches from her ear, a robe draped over her bare shoulder, their expressions soft and private, completely unaware of the lens that had caught them. For a moment, there was no sound, not even the clink of silverware. Then someone exhaled, loudly, and the air snapped back into the room like a whip. People murmured. A few gasped. Chairs scraped the floor. Someone at the back laughed awkwardly, hoping it was a joke. It wasn't. The next slide appeared, 2 teenagers holding signs about kindness. The program rolled on like nothing had happened. But it was too late. The damage was done. I looked at Molly. She was frozen, not blinking, not breathing, just staring at the screen as if she could will the image back into the dark. Then she turned slowly toward me. "Did you?" she whispered, but the words wouldn't finish. I didn't respond. What could I say? That I had watched her erase me from her life? That I had pieced together her affair from late-night messages and hotel invoices? That the photo she'd shared as a flirtation had become the wrecking ball to her curated world? Across the room, Calvin had gone pale. Lena didn't move. She just watched him. Someone from the nonprofit staff rushed to the front, speaking frantically with the MC. The slideshow ended abruptly. The lights came up, and a new speaker awkwardly took the stage, launching into a forced toast about embracing challenges as opportunities. But the room was already leaving them behind. A woman 2 tables down whispered loudly, "That's the guy from the family counseling panel, isn't it?" Another leaned in to her husband, eyes wide. "Isn't that Molly? She runs the fidelity coaching sessions online." I stood. I didn't make a scene. I didn't shout. I just stood, adjusted my cuff, and offered Molly the smallest nod. She didn't stop me. She couldn't. I walked past Calvin, who sat slack-jawed in his chair, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for his water glass. He looked up as I passed, but I didn't acknowledge him. I had nothing to say to that man. He wasn't worth the breath. Outside, the night air hit like a slap, cool, sharp, real. I walked to the edge of the parking lot, sat on the hood of my car, and watched as guests began filtering out. Whispers, curious glances, more than a few pointing fingers. Lena emerged 20 minutes later. She walked straight past Calvin, who trailed after her like a dog who knew it had no leash anymore. She didn't look back. When she reached me, she didn't say anything. Just leaned against the car beside me, hands in the pockets of her coat. We watched the traffic lights change across the street. Eventually, I asked, "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. Then, not even a little. "But I will be." I nodded. Calvin lost his position at the counseling organization by morning. Their board issued a terse press release citing a breach of ethical expectations. His bio disappeared from their website within hours. Molly fared no better. Her brand built on vulnerability, trust, and radical relationship honesty crumbled under scrutiny. Clients canceled. Speaking gigs vanished. Her social media became a battlefield of silence and passive-aggressive comments. She posted a statement 3 days later, "I'm taking time to reflect, learn, and grow." The internet tore it apart within minutes. I didn't engage. I didn't need to. The world was doing exactly what I'd avoided doing myself, holding her accountable. Our house, once a refuge, felt cold now. Not in temperature, but in spirit. Her things remained untouched for days. She didn't come home that night after the dinner. Or the next. When she finally returned, she didn't even go upstairs. She sat on the couch, coat still on, and looked at me. "I messed everything up," she said. I didn't disagree. "You humiliated me," she added, like that was the crime. "No," I said quietly. "You did that to yourself. I just gave the truth a microphone." She cried then. Not for me. For herself. For her image. For the version of her that she thought could keep all the plates spinning. I watched her cry. And I felt nothing. Not hate. Not joy. Just quiet. Later that night, I took down the photo of us in Rome that still hung by the staircase. We were laughing in it, wine in hand, eyes locked on each other like nothing else existed. It didn't feel like us anymore. It felt like a ghost. 3 days after the fallout, Molly showed up unannounced. I was in the garage, elbow deep in a rusted engine I didn't even plan to fix. The door creaked open, and there she was, framed by sunlight but looking nothing like herself. No makeup. Hair tied back in a messy knot. Her usual confidence had cracked and slipped away. "I need to talk," she said. I didn't answer. Just wiped my hands on a rag and kept my eyes on the tools. She stepped inside, wringing her hands. "I'm pregnant." My stomach turned. Not because I believed her, but because I knew exactly what she was doing. Reaching for control. One last card to play. I met her eyes. "Are you?" She nodded, swallowing hard. "Prove it." She blinked. "What?" "Take a test. Right now." She hesitated. "I don't think." "Then don't say it again." The silence between us was colder than the steel in my hand. She turned and left without another word. 2 days later, she sent a letter. Pages of it. Apologies. Regrets. Promises. She said she'd lost herself and hoped we could rebuild. She blamed the pressure of being admired, of having to play perfect. She said she loved me. Said she never stopped. I didn't respond. The next message came the following night: "There's no baby. I just didn't know how else to make you listen." There it was. Everything laid bare. No truth. No humility. Just tactics. I moved out within a week. Found a small rental just outside the city. Nothing fancy, 2 rooms, a leaky faucet, creaky floors. But it was mine. I started working part-time at a motorcycle restoration shop. The hours were long, the pay modest, but my hands were busy and my head finally quiet. I picked up writing again, something I hadn't done since before Molly and I got serious. On weekends, I'd take the old bike out along the coast, letting the wind strip away whatever weight still clung to me. Then came the blog. Just photos and posts about the bikes I worked on. Thoughts about rebuilding machines and occasionally rebuilding myself. People responded. Some with questions about restorations, others with stories of their own heartbreak and healing. It grew faster than I expected. One morning, Lena dropped off coffee. She didn't say much, just handed me the cup and nodded toward the latest engine I'd been working on. "Looks good," she said. "Trying to get the timing right," I replied. Our conversations were like that now. Sparse. Honest. No performance. Molly tried to reach out a few more times. Letters. Emails. A card left under my door with no return address. Even an anonymous blog comment that quoted a line from our wedding vows. But I was done responding to echoes. I didn't burn her things. I didn't delete every trace. I just let them fade. Peace, it turns out, isn't something you earn through revenge. It's what's left when you finally stop chasing people who stop choosing you.